Talking about restorative yoga tonight, and I'm just here to talk for a couple minutes about the patient perspective of how it's benefited me.
Scott, right?
With chronic fatigue syndrome, one of our biggest problems is deconditioning and tension due to stress, among other things. It's been hard for me to find an exercise program that I can actually do. I tried walking around the block, and that's been pretty futile. I can't do that. But I can do restorative yoga, so it's something that you can do when you're really pretty debilitated as far as other activities go. So, my sort of benchmark is, does the activity give me post-exertional malaise? And so I can do restorative yoga because it doesn't give me post-exertional malaise. It's easy, it's relaxing. A couple things that help specifically with chronic fatigue syndrome. One of the things that we experience is that our nervous system gets overwrapped and won't shut down, and then it makes it hard to sleep, and we get really tense and store a lot of muscle tension. So restorative yoga actually has the capability to shut down that overwrapped nervous system. It also helps increase flexibility, and it's helped me with my orthostatic hypotension. I started this go-around taking a restorative yoga class about 2 months ago. When I started, I couldn't do anything with my eyes closed because I would get dizzy. And after 2 months of going once a week and practicing for an hour and 20 minutes, I can now do that, so it's helped with that as well. A couple of recommendations that I have. When you find a restorative teacher, restorative yoga, make sure to tell them what your physical limitations are. Yoga teachers are really well trained to sort of titrate exercises or postures and sort of help you if you're doing a pose that's difficult for you. You can talk more about that. And then don't have any qualms about sitting a pose out if you feel like it's too much for you. Like right now, I can't do any poses that need muscle strength. So I have to just, lay there. And, it's kind of, in a class, you sort of get this competitive feeling like you have to do what everybody else is doing, and you just have to really just throw that idea out because that doesn't work for us. So when I started restorative yoga 2 months ago, that was the only thing I did all day, just to make sure I didn't get PEM by stacking activities. And now I can do other things. I can go to lunch with my family that same day. And so you just, really have to pay attention to your own body and whether you get post-exertional malaise or not. So that's about all I have to say.
Thanks, Laura. That was perfect. Again, I'm really happy to be here. My name is Scott Moore, and I've been teaching yoga for the past 13 years, and I've been teaching restorative yoga for about as long. And I own a yoga studio in town called Prana Yoga, which is in Trolley Square. We can talk about that later. We offer several types of yoga there, one of which is restorative yoga. And I'm very passionate about restorative yoga for a lot of reasons. But one of those reasons is because of my relationship with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I think sometimes when we think about yoga, sometimes we have a preconception of what yoga is. Sometimes I believe when I tell people that I teach yoga or that I practice yoga, almost always the first question is, can you put your foot behind your head? And I always say, that's overrated. In fact, anything that I can't do, I always say, that's overrated. Sometimes people ask, why don't we ever do XYZ pose in your class? Because it's overrated. Because I can't do it. Really, and I think that really speaks to really the essence of yoga. I'm going to readjust. Good. Maybe that's a little bit better. So, yoga isn't necessarily about trying to perform any one thing. I want to back up just a little bit. My relationship with chronic fatigue syndrome revolves around my former wife. Her name is Celeste, and she's still working with chronic fatigue syndrome. But she's been working with chronic fatigue syndrome for about the last 12 years. And when she was in her work, she would kind of rate her degree of activity, what she could do, her capacity. If other people her age were running around 90 or 95 or 100% capacity. She was running around 15 or 20% capacity, right? And she felt very frustrated by that for obvious reasons. If, here she is in her mid to late 20s, early 30s, and so decapacitated with this illness, when all the friends around her are doing all these wonderful things, part of that process of understanding who she was in relationship to chronic fatigue was to understand that there was no comparison between her and other people. She's made some wonderful changes in her life, and one of those was to move to Hawaii. And wouldn't that be great if we could all have that opportunity? But for her, that was a choice that she made that has helped her immensely, as well as some very many other things. She's worked with Dr. Bateman. She's done some other wonderful things. Very autodidactic, very a wonderful self-learner about what she needed for herself. And I'm happy to say that 12 years later, she's probably running around 80 to 85% capacity. So I'm very, very happy about that, and she is too. And so we were sort of on our yoga path at the same time that we were discovering her relationship with chronic fatigue syndrome. And we realized how complementary the two could be, right? And how one can definitely serve the other. And here I am, kind of mid to late 20s, teaching a wide variety of yoga practices. And she learned very quickly that the practice that was right for her was one that was supportive, one that gave her a lot of permission to be exactly where she was at that day, that didn't demand anything from her other than to just step up to where her comfortable edge was, and one that gave her plenty of opportunity to relax and to rest. Right? I believe that yoga is a practice that can be for everybody, no matter where you are in life, no matter your physical capabilities, whether you can touch your toes or not, right? Whether you're a 20-year-old, young, fit, strapping youth, or whether you have, whether you have a little bit more wisdom behind you, right? And you, maybe are a little bit not as vibrant, right? So yoga has something to do with everybody. And I love the idea that there's a way to approach this practice in a way that works for everybody, whether that's restorative yoga, meditation on one end, to a really dynamic practice on the other. Okay? So I've talked just a little bit about yoga, but I'm interested in hearing from any of you. And I know, first of all, who has done yoga before? Raise your hand. So, yeah, about half of us. Good. And whether or not we've done yoga, according to you, what is yoga? What do you think? You've done yoga before? And what is your name? Anne. Anne? What's your relationship with yoga? What is yoga according to you?
Well, I think it's about
being present. Being present with your body. I think that's really crucial. I think that's probably, if you could surmise that into something really tight, I think it's being present, and being present with your body is a big part of that. Thanks, Anne. Yeah. You've done yoga? What's your name?
my name's Linda. For me, it offers such a range of different kinds of motion. And, some motion resonates very strongly with you. And I found that if you select the right yoga, that it's very resonating. You feel like it's almost been presented and designed for you.
I think you said something really important, Linda, and that was choosing the right kind of yoga. Like I said, yoga can range from, what I joke as stretching and napping classes, right, to a very active, I'm going to sweat quite a bit, And within that range, we can hopefully find something that works for all of us, right? But I like what you said about finding a range of motion that was appropriate to your needs. Awesome. Anything else? What is yoga? Anybody? I think, again, sometimes we get a lot of ideas about yoga. We have that image of the person with their foot behind their head or doing some outrageously complicated pose. And if that's where your yoga practice is, there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But over my 14-year relationship with yoga, I've constantly had to redefine what yoga is based on what I discover about yoga. And for me, my current working definition of what yoga is, and I call it a working definition because I think it's probably changed over the years, but for me, what yoga is the process of understanding who I am through the method of listening. That's for me, that's what the definition of yoga is. The process of understanding who I am through the method of listening. Kind of like what Anne suggested, being present, right? And I can be present to very many things, whether that's being present to my breath, being present to a particular part of my body that is either receiving an opportunity to strengthen or find an ability to release, etc. Right? So that's what yoga is. It's about being here, right here and now. In fact, I extend the practice of yoga into my running practice, into driving, into grocery store shopping. You know, whenever I have an opportunity to be present, which is, you know, almost always, that's an opportunity for me to pay attention. And what yoga suggests is that as we pay attention, there's something in relationship to a self-discovery as we pay attention. That who we are somewhere or other has to do with how we're paying attention to the world. So a provocative concept that we can, you know, go into maybe in some other venue. But specifically, I'm interested in thinking about ways that we can practice this paying attention with a byproduct that gives us energy and vibrancy, but in a way that also allows us to relax and let go and chill out. You know what I mean? When I always say when we get done with yoga practice, the way we want to feel is not depleted or like I've just been through a workout, or perhaps maybe that I've done something physical and I feel both relaxed, grounded, and calm at the same time that I feel lucid and clear and energized. And I don't believe those two necessarily have to be mutually exclusive, right? But the key doesn't lie necessarily within even the style of yoga or the teacher. The key really relies on the real teacher, which is your own inner teacher. It's your own self. It's your ability to pay attention to you and how your body is inviting you to maybe don't go so deep in this pose. Like Laurel suggested, she knows that her limits on certain poses, she's not going to do this pose, and so she's going to take that opportunity to relax and out of that pose and not do that, right? And as we learn to listen to ourselves in that way, that practice will lead us through, hopefully, managing chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia in a way that makes us feel very effective and in control of the things that happen in our lives, right? I remember the day when Celeste came to me and she just had a great visit with Dr. Bain. And, you know, Celeste was doing all the things she could possibly think of to help herself out with this illness, right? And she, like I said, a real self-learner, had been reading all the books, had been trying all the supplements, doing everything she could possibly do. And after a really wonderful session with Dr. Bateman, she came home and we were both sitting there looking at each other, talking about this. And she said, you know, Dr. Bateman told me that I'm doing everything that I can be doing, that I'm doing everything I should, and that there's going to be no silver bullet with this thing. And in some degree, you know, part of us was hoping that we would find the cure, find the answer for this thing. It would be easy, and boom, suddenly this wouldn't be an issue anymore. But the inverse happened. We found out, you know, we don't know when this is going to stop, if it's going to stop. And in fact, instead of being disappointed about that, we were like, you know, pumping our fists. In the sense that we knew for surety that we could just relax into the experience and see what it had to teach us along the way. Stop trying to effort our way through it, thinking that if I only did that next thing, perhaps I would find the solution to this. Right? But that the solution was to be involved in it. Let it be a teacher. Let it help me figure out what this is about. Now, one thing I've also learned about chronic fatigue syndrome is that I believe everybody in here has a different relationship with this thing. That there's no one, every case is a little bit different. And I've had a lot of other friends who say they have chronic fatigue syndrome, and therefore they can only run 20 miles a week instead of, yeah, exactly, instead of like, you know, for some of us that's obscene, right? I wish I had your brand of chronic fatigue syndrome, you know? Right, you know, and because there used to be triathletes who would run, you know, 70 miles a week, right? And so, you know, and a lot of people who feel like who have chronic fatigue syndrome have landed there because they failed to regularly listen to their bodies. And the net result of that was the body going into shutdown mode, saying, well, if you're not going to listen to me, we're shutting this thing down. You know? And consequently, you know, they've had to spend years climbing up out of it. So hopefully what our yoga practice can do, again, is that process of regularly learning to pay attention, to check in, right? Something that we can expand in all parts of our lives, right? For Celeste, one of the very, very best things about her relationship with yoga was her practice. She created a practice for herself. And that's the essence of yoga. It's a practice. It's what you do on a day in and day out basis. Right? Not necessarily what you do in a yoga class, but how you practice being in the world. And part of that for her involved breath practice. You know, breathing in and out. We'll learn some breathing techniques that will be very beneficial. Things you can do. You don't have time or energy to get to a yoga class. Something you can do, well, you know, before you take a nap, before, you know, as you're waking up in the morning. Things you can do that will hopefully either give you energy or help you relax. Right? It also involves some gentle poses. And we're going to go over some gentle poses, all of which can be done either lying down on the floor or sitting in a chair. For those of you who just came in, I'll give you some sheets. We've got some nifty little hand-designed stick figures that I've drawn myself. And other parts, meditation, some mindful resting. For her, it was about learning to go with the flow instead of resisting. And that was, I think, for a 20-year-old, 25-year-old overachiever, that was probably the biggest thing that she had to learn. Right? And not everybody's in that same boat, but that for her was a real big thing. And then, of course, listening to your body instead of trying to conquer it or even cure it. She had to practice radical self-acceptance. You know, these are all things that are hard to prescribe, right? They're hard to practice, but something we can do on a regular basis. And then she had to learn how to gradually build her energetic capital. We kind of talk like her bank account, right? And sometimes she was overdrawn, but bit by bit she slowly started to create an energetic savings account that she could draw on later. And I was talking about Scott with this a little bit earlier, like maybe you have a big event, like coming tonight might be a big event, and some of us might need to recover for another day or so, you know, just coming out. And so we kind of have to learn how to budget our energy in those kind of ways, right? So I want to give some cues as to things that we can do that are both practical, things we can grow into, some overarching things. And I'm happy to answer any time anybody has a question about anything. I'd be more than welcome. You're more than welcome to ask that. I'm really happy to answer those kinds of things. Before we talk anything else, any comments that anybody would like to make, or any questions that anybody would like to make before we move on to any other part of our presentation? Yeah, Laura?
I just wanted to make a comment when you talk about resistance. For me, a lot of it has been being in pain, being in constant pain, and resisting that, and therefore building up a lot of muscle tension because of that.
Yeah.
And trying to get out of that is really helpful.
I think that's key, and I know that was key for other people that I've known with chronic fatigue syndrome. And we talked about this a little bit the other day before a yoga class, in that when we all feel pain, we sometimes, even unconsciously, resist around that pain, we splint and therefore create more tension, compounding that dis-ease in the body, right? Somebody explained to me tension in our muscles is kind of like a feedback loop. You've heard that, when you walk the microphones too close to each other, not very pleasant. It's something in our muscle is firing to try to like protect or trying to hold itself out of tension, and it gets into this cycle where it doesn't know how to let go of that tension. This is energy we could be using doing something else. I like the analogy of a dog on a chain, and what it wants to be doing is like, spending its energy running around the park, but it ends up spending all of its energy pulling against the chain, right? Those are like we have some energy in our body, but it's being spent holding tension. And if we can find some skillful means by which we can let go of that tension, then we've got all this capital that we can go run around the park. What do we want to do? I think it's an excellent point. And we'll talk about some of those major muscles they can tighten, how to loosen this up. Linda?
A concept that has helped me a lot is to think of pain as a flow, an energy rather than a solid. And when you think of it as a flow, you're much more willing to entertain it. It's there, and kind of being able to help it move on its way instead of bridging against it. The minute you bridge against it, it's like it gets solid, and it really means business once it gets rigid. So my biggest help has been to think of it as a flow. And like maybe sitting for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I start feeling it in my lips, and I found that if I just think of it as flowing, and help it along, it's immensely useful.
Excellent. What a great pointer. What a great tool. I like that idea of the flow. I think of like a wave, right? And if you've ever been surfing, what I do isn't necessarily called surfing. What I do is sort of floundering in waves with a board attached to my ankle. That's what I do, right? But you could imagine what it would be like here. So here's this enormous wave. Even if it's a wave like this high, it's still so much more powerful than I am. You think of the weight of those things, and its ability to just like annihilate you is pretty intense. But let's say we call this a wave of pain, and rather than, I'm not going to be able to push that wave back, but maybe I can somehow put myself in a relationship to it. Instead of trying to resist it, try to go with the flow of it. And perhaps, at very least, I can maybe, not like it doesn't affect me, but I can maybe skillfully move under the wave, or, I don't know, learn how to get on that board and ride it, who knows, right? Or to wait for it to pass by. I think it's a really great suggestion. Any other comments or questions? Yes?
You talk about chronic fatigue and the pain, the muscle pain. Now, my understanding is the muscle pain that I'm experiencing, I went to Dr. Bateman, and she diagnosed me with fibromyalgia, which results in a lot of fatigue. Then it's just there, but are the two just so interrelated that we don't separate them, we just talk about them together?
Fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. I have to admit I'm much more familiar with chronic fatigue than I am fibromyalgia, and I know.
As she was just saying, she's in pain, the chronic fatigue, and she's in pain. Well, the pain comes from the chronic fatigue, or does it come from fibro?
Do you know the answer to this?
Yes. The answer is yes. It comes from both.
It comes from both.
They're interactive.
Interactive.
Yeah.
Both. I know people who say that they don't have fibromyalgia, they have pain. They would say they're just chronic fatigue syndrome. Other people who say they're in pain and they just have fibromyalgia. Sometimes they're kind of interrelated. But I know they both. One of the common denominators between both of them is they both feel like they have pain is a big symptom of both of those.
Yeah, pain and fatigue. The case definitions are a little bit different. And with fibromyalgia, pain seems to be the more dominant somatic that we experience. And with chronic fatigue, it seems to be the fatigue and what it causes that's the dominant symptom. But if you read down the symptom list, my gosh, they're very similar.
They
maybe,
really are.
except for the trigger points, maybe, of fibromyalgia. They're so very similar.
Great. Any questions or comments before we move on? So let me continue here. One of the mantras, and a mantra is a phrase, we've heard this phrase before, mantra. It's a Sanskrit word, and it means, man comes from the Sanskrit word meaning manas, or mind, right? My ability to conceptualize or think. And tra is the same root as the word to transcend or to expand. So through my mind, through my consciousness, I can transcend my current experience. That's what a mantra is about, right? But we've also come to learn this as kind of a colloquialism for a phrase that we can say in our mind or out loud that will give us maybe a greater understanding or kind of a pathway toward wellness. And one of the mantras that I really enjoy is, instead of mind over matter, which is I think, kind of Linda's approach to maybe somebody who wants to push the wall away, you push the pain away. Instead, mind in matter, I think, is an excellent, and this is part and parcel with the practice of yoga. Yoga isn't about trying to conquer something or trying to acquire something, really. It's about being completely involved in your own experience. And so the irony of this is, in order to move through chronic fatigue syndrome, we have to be totally, allow ourselves to be carried by this. We have to be totally accepting of our current situation, which is pretty hard. I know that in my relationship with chronic fatigue, Celeste has spent very many frustrating days, a lot of tears, a lot of anxiety and depression about the fact that this is really hard to go through. And her release into this didn't necessarily make it happy, but at least she stopped resisting and started the process of her own self-healing. You know what I mean? So I love this mantra, mind in matter and not mind over matter. That means that's an invitation to pay attention. In fact, let's just do a little quick exercise. If you wouldn't mind, just sit here for a second, and you can just sit back in your chair, close your eyes for a second. And if you're cool with this, try putting your feet on the floor. Just kind of lean back into your chair for a second and give yourself a breath or two in and out through your nostrils. And our whole job, our whole practice here for the next moment is just to notice, how am I feeling? And so let's feel on a couple layers. Let's first feel physically how I'm doing, but I want to also give a qualifier. See if you can resist any sort of judgment, right? It's not good or bad, even if there might be something that doesn't feel great. Just notice, how are you feeling physically? If you feel something in your shoulders, just notice your shoulders. If you feel something in your back, notice there's some sensation in your back. And even if you do feel something that might not necessarily be pleasant, also look at those places that might feel okay. If you don't have very much energy in your back because it's sensitive there, but maybe you feel some energy in your arms or your legs. And so without any judgment, you're just feeling the way your body is. Everybody, by the way, this is yoga. We're doing yoga right now. This is fantastic. Right? Foot behind the head is optional. And if you can do that,
That's optional.
that's optional. It's not an option for me, but it's an option. Okay, so now let's still keep our eyes closed here for a second. Now I want you to feel on a different level. I want you to feel now what your heart is feeling. What kind of emotions do you feel in this moment? And again, there's no judgment. There's no shoulds. There's no have tos. It's an invitation. What are your emotions feeling right now? Are you paying attention? Just checking in again. Even if there's an emotion you don't love, that's all right. Notice you're feeling that. And then for a moment, notice your thoughts. Notice what your mind is processing in this moment. Yeah. Listen to the yoga thing. I wish I were out eating ice cream, or doing something different, or this is really great. I'm thinking about being here, or maybe I'm thinking about being somewhere else. That's what I'm thinking about. And you're welcome to open your eyes. Simple little practice of just pausing for a moment. That's really the essence of what we do in our yoga practice. Now, we might compound that by moving into a particular position in our body to fine-tune some awareness. And the byproduct of that fine-tuned awareness might also bring some release of tension in our muscles, like bring some energy through our body as we move through some of our joints, and might give us some well-needed rest. So those are some of the benefits. But really, that's the essence of our practice. So before we go on, I just want to kind of give a brief outline. I want to talk a little bit for a moment about how yoga helps with pain, with tension, with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. I want to talk about specifically the kind of practice that we can do. And I've built a little something that I've given you all, some poses that we can reference, and we're going to go over some of those, as well as some breathing techniques, and we'll go over some of those. And I know that we have limited energetic capital, so I promise we will not be here all night, but hopefully the little tidbits of information we get will be super beneficial, and I can give you some information about other resources that we can use for yoga. Okay? So it's important to remember that yoga styles differ quite broadly. And to say that I do yoga is sometimes misleading, because there are types of yoga where they will heat the room to 105 degrees, and you are in a very intense environment for 90 minutes, and you spend maybe 700 or 800 calories going through, or more, going through this yoga experience, right? So that's on one end. And then we have other types of yoga that are devoted mostly to meditation, to gentle stretching, to breathing. Like I joke, the stretching and napping classes over here, and like the 800 or 900 calorie burns classes over here. It's almost incredible to think that they're two of the same. They're both called yoga, right? And what those two have in common is they both invite us to pay attention, right? But different strokes for different folks, different people in different stages of their lives need different things, right? My 20-year-old niece needs something very different that's going to make her present than does my 67-year-old mother, who needs something very different over here. But they can both practice something called yoga, right? So as Laurel sort of alluded to in the beginning, there is restorative yoga, which is one of my favorite styles of yoga because it's so inviting, because it's so accommodating for all different types of practitioners. I joke, but it's not really a joke, it's true, but a lot of the times the people I have in my restorative yoga classes are both people who are rehabilitating, they want a gentle practice, right? Or they want physical experience that's not going to be so jarring. Those people, and my ultra athletes, people who are doing like triathlons and Ironmans, that short little race where people will swim 2.4 miles and then bike like 156 miles, and then just because they're bored, run a marathon on top of that, just to finish up the day. So they don't feel lazy, right? And because, right, we'll see them in the chronic fatigue syndrome, seminars next year, right? No, but these people, they're trained athletes, and the last thing they need is another workout. So they come to Restore to like honor their bodies in that way, right? And so there's a place for them, right? But it's important to understand, Restore Yoga is a brand of yoga. It's a style of yoga, and it involves three components. Mostly, it involves passive resting poses, and passive poses aren't necessarily. They don't leave you feeling lethargic. On the contrary, they leave you feeling energized if done right. And hopefully your teacher is skillful enough to kind of lead you through those. Some other components of a restorative yoga class, there's a gentle mobilization of joints. Sort of like Linda suggested, not only can pain be a wave, but energy is a wave that moves through our body. And we can learn to access this very skillfully through the method of our movement, through our joints, and through our breath. And we're going to use some of those practices as well. So our approach to yoga is going to be first to rest and stabilize. This is kind of the big broad term of what we want to do with yoga. Rest and stabilize, get a foundation of some energetic capital, and then with that, learn how to skillfully build in a way that doesn't deplete us, right? In a way that doesn't go out and we spend all of our capital up right off the bat and not in deficit again, and I have to go lay down for the next 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the broad direction of what I think could be possible for people who suffer with fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome. Okay, so Restore Yoga. The way I like to organize a yoga class and Restore Yoga class is first to restore energy through gentle movement. Energy gets trapped in the body, whether that's through our joints, through our muscles, and by doing some gentle movement, we can let some of that go, kind of let the dog off the chain, so to speak, so some of that energy can start to travel through our body. Then we're going to do some long, slow, passive stretches that will, again, take this energy that is in our muscles and begin to circulate that through our body. One of the problems with, like we were mentioning, one of the problems with people who are in pain is they compound that pain by tightening up their muscles. So maybe we don't take away the pain, but at least we take away all the things that compound that pain, right? It's like we're doing our best to drive down the road, and we only have 1 or 2 gears, but let's at least take off the parking brake, you know what I mean? Let's do everything we can for ourselves so that we're, you know, at least running to the capacity we can, right? And we'll do those with some long, passive stretches. And then I want to talk about some resting poses, both horizontally and supine, lying down, that open up the body without taxing it, no strain. And then we'll do some breath work. We'll do some breathing poses, okay? So does everybody have one of these things? I think I've given one of these to everybody. Let's take a look at these fantastic stick figures that I've drawn. Do they give a specific art award for stick figures? I'm just checking. I know of a good candidate.
Yeah, the golden toothpick.
The golden toothpick. The golden stick. Okay, so I've got a chair up here, and I'm going to sit here in the chair. And so a good way to practice this, if you're sitting, is to do one of two things. Either sit all the way to the back of your chair with your hips right at the back so your spine can be straight and supported, or if you're feeling a little bit more energized, to sit at the edge of your chair like this, so I can be upright and energized. What I want to avoid is like the 17-year-old watching TV. Not very life-affirming, you know. It collapses my chest. I have a hard time breathing. Right? But this is like the yogic way of sitting. Okay. And if you're game, if we're going to do a practice, let's put our feet flat on the floor. Like I said, we're doing something that helps us pay attention, and we're going to be very conscious about the way we hold our body as we do this practice. So first thing we're going to do is a couple of these things that will help us gently mobilize our body. Okay, so you're welcome to join along with me. If you want to just watch and pay attention, you're welcome to try that too. But if you're game, let's start with our fingertips on our shoulders. And we're going to start with a couple of slow breaths in and out through our nostrils. And then we're going to coordinate some movement with our breathing. So when you inhale, do a little lift of your elbows. Yeah, like wish we had sex so close to our neighbor. Hey, we're family now, right? Inhale. This thing kind of opens up. Your back might even slightly arch a little bit. And as you exhale, this thing might come back together. Now, I'm going to invite you to do this to the degree that it feels right for you. If you feel like you need to rest for a little bit, right? And just chill out and rest for a little while. If this feels great, go for it. I also say there are equal parts instruction and equal parts improvisation. So if you're going through this and you're like, this was fantastic, then feel free to like hang out there for a little while, right? Or like I said, if you're moving around, you're like, okay, that's too much. Then chill out for a little bit. You know what I mean? So I'm going to kind of put you in the ballpark, and then you can kind of determine what you need to do. Yeah, question?
But when you're doing this, I've just happened to have a stiff neck tonight. When you're doing this and you hit the pain point, is it good to linger there and just kind of do the deep breathe and hope it goes away? Hope it helps?
That is a great response. My motto is pain, no gain. Right? So if I hit a pain point, that's my body telling me to do something a little bit different. I like to kind of take the backdoor approach and ease away from pain, keep the mobilization going, and then see if after a little while, maybe then, because I've done some mobilizing and some stretching, the pain goes away on its own, right? But I think that is a good response when you find something there to pause, to breathe. And if it passes, wonderful, move on. If it doesn't pass, then that's your invitation. You can maybe back off. Remember, we're not trying to push through something. We're working in relationship with it. So I think that's an excellent comment. Thank you. Okay. So a couple rotations around through our shoulders, right? And then let's just do a couple of rotations around through our wrists and hands. And you might notice, like, you know, it seems sort of like a kind of a banal exercise, you know, moving through my hands. But you'll notice after doing this for a few moments just how much energy it takes to move your hands. And think of how much we do with our hands all the time, every day, right? Now, energy, as yoga suggests, works like in channels, like in waves. And sometimes things get stuck. Think of like a river or a stream with a big log stuck in the middle of it, and the flow can't happen. So when we move through things like this, it helps get the flow moving a little bit. Okay? So next here is a twist. So if you've got maybe one hand goes on one of your knees, the other hand on your armrest or something, I want you to try to sit up as tall as you can, and then just whatever shoulder is bent, whatever direction you're moving, pull that shoulder back and just do a gentle twist. We don't want it to hurt. No strain invited into this practice, but keep that slow breath going. This is awesome for the deep and superficial muscles in your core. It stretches the muscles along your spine. Excellent for digestion. Wonderful for your nervous system. It wrings it all out. And we'll give ourselves like 3 or 4 long breaths. Again, no strain invited. Back off if you're finding it overly challenging. Feel free to rest whenever you need to. And then maybe about now we're going to switch sides. And sometimes it's nice to kind of come back to the middle, give yourself a breath or so. And then we'll switch to the other side. So my goal is to try to do as little as possible, but receive the maximum amount of benefit. And my guess is that even doing these few little exercises will definitely make us feel different at the end of this than the way we started in our practice today. This practice that we're going through, it doesn't have to take very long at all. You can do the whole thing in a couple minutes. Or do whatever part you want. Okay? And then after a couple of those, let's bring it back to middle. Again, just close your eyes for a second. Take a couple slow breaths in and out through your nostrils. Relax your jaw if you're like me and want to clench up there. Just, again, pay attention. How's my body feeling now? Very good. Now, we may not have a ton of room to do this, especially if we're behind somebody, but if you're sitting at home, you can, let's say, inhale and extend your leg out straight, and exhale, bend that knee again. And inhale, extend the leg out straight. If you're sitting in a chair, that extension maybe goes like 2 inches before you kick your knee in front of you. Okay? But at the end of the day, here we have a non-weight bearing version of quadricep. These are quadriceps, right? And we're strengthening some of these major muscles in our body and getting some blood flow going down the lower extremities of the body in a way that I don't think, the chair is carrying the body. I don't have to worry about messing anything up. But again, I'll do a couple of those. All good. Okay. Mobilize my knees, in particular my ankles. You could also, if you wanted to, do some ankle rolls and things like that. Okay, so those are our gentle mobilizers. And anything else you feel would be beneficial, wonderful. Okay, so that could be a walk. That could be, a gentle little, this and that, up and down. In fact, we're going to add that to our next stretch. So, you're not supposed to have favorites. But if I had a favorite stretch, it might be this one, right? They're like your children. You're not supposed to have favorites, but one of them just kind of like, you tend to like that a little bit better, right? So this is one of my favorites. This is a great stretch for these muscles. They can tighten the upper part of the back. These are trapezius muscles. So bring one of your arms, let's say your right arm, and cross it over your left arm, like so. There's a posing move called eagle pose, and this is kind of taking the arms, approaching the. I'm going to cross above my elbows, and then if I can, bring my hands up and touch like this, right? If my arms weren't built to do that, don't worry about it. You can hold onto your shoulders instead. Is something wrong with me? No, nothing wrong. That's just the way your body works. Also, if you have like a cord or something at home, or your significant other's ugliest tie that just happens to find itself in your hands, right? That works really nice too. Lift your elbows up slightly. Now push your forearms gently away from your nose. Anybody feel that stretch in your upper back? And then I'll turn my head to one side. As I exhale, I'll turn my head to the other side. So we have certain like stored depots of tension in our body, and this is a big one right here. So I'll do this a couple times. Turn my head side to side. And as I breathe, I'm breathing in and out through my nostrils and trying to affect my breath to lift my upper back some. When I exhale, I think of that exhale carrying tension out. So let's release and then send a sigh out our mouth once. The image I like is, you kind of scrub the bathtub free of all the stuff, but now it needs to rinse all out before you get rid of it. And it's all sparkly clean. Like we kind of loosened up some of the tension. Okay, so the next one, again, if you have space, go for it. I'm going to cross one ankle over. Yes,
Did you
question?
do that in reverse then?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we did do the other. We should probably do the other side. We have two arms,
well,
right?
we don't have to do it.
I think we should. Thank you. That happens in yoga class too. Yeah, I think we brought right arm on top last time, so let's bring left arm on top. So as we bring this up, yeah. Because you'll notice one emphasizes one shoulder more than the other, so you want to do both sides. And then if that seems like it helped you last time, inhale, turn your head in one direction. Exhale, turn your head in the other direction. Now remember, if you feel any strain, that's your body's invitation to do it slightly differently or less intense. And then once we've done it on this side, yeah, I'm going to suggest 5 or 6 breaths, if not more. When you get done, just send a couple of those sighs out your mouth. And sometimes when we approach some of that tension, right, we get a little bit amped up emotionally. It's nice to just send it back up. And then, as always, you pause for a moment, notice, okay, I'm feeling a little bit more energy in my shoulders, I'm feeling a bit less intense there. Okay? So next pose on the docket is this guy. I'm going to cross one leg up over. I'm going to keep my toes slightly flexed toward my shin. This flexion makes it so that I protect the outside of my knee. And again, yeah, some of us don't have to go very high at all before we feel a wonderful stretch in our hip. And others of us are like, stretch, I don't know where you're learning that. Right? Now, if you're one of those people who are a little bit flexible, you can start to lean forward a little bit. And then I'm starting to feel that. That's pretty good. This muscle on the outside of the hip, external hip rotators, namely the piriformis muscle. And it gets tight when we do things like walk or anything active. And ironically, it also gets tight when we sit for a long time. I'm the guy in the airport in the corner of the terminal doing this after like on the layover. Like, oh, I've been sitting for the last 8 hours. Okay? And then release. Now, these are some of our big muscles that are used for movement. And so consequently, they're going to be some of the ones that get the tightest. But also, that's where we're going to get our big payoffs for releasing energy back into the body. Right? So a comfortable stretch, no strain, but lean forward, maintain your deep breath. And this is one of those things when you get done, you're going to feel like, I want to get up and walk around a little bit. Good. Slow deep breaths, and then we'll come back up and place both feet back. And generally, I would typically hold poses for about at least 5 or 6 long breaths. If you can, elongate your breath to be like 5 seconds on the inhale and 5 seconds on the exhale. So you're going to be in the pose for about up to a minute. Or longer. If you love it, stay there for as long as you can. Okay? Anybody feel a difference in their legs? Even in a pose? It's amazing. We're just sitting in a chair. So last little stretch thing. Just raise one arm up in the air. Let's see your left arm up in the air. Maybe put your other arm on your arm rest there. Just do a gentle side stretch. Getting enough oxygen into our bloodstream is a big part of feeling energized, right? Putting some clarity up in our heads. Part of that facilitation of oxygen is just having the lung capacity to open up. Our lungs get tight if we're not like opening them up in this way. So we stretch these muscles between the ribs, the intercostal muscles and some other ones. And we increase our lung capacity just because there's more space to breathe into. Let's bring it up. The elbow comes down, other arm reaches up, and we're going over to the other side. Okay, so it's not enough just to hold the pose, we've got to hold and breathe. Now, if your arm gets tired, just put your hand on your head. And use your wisdom if you start to get a little bit, it's starting to wear you down. Just chill out for a little bit. Okay. And then release. So I want to show you 3 poses where we can do this lying down. Something we can hopefully adopt at home. Harder to do in a chair, so I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to show you either here on the ground or using this. We're going to use a wall as our prop. Okay, so I brought a couple of things with me. This is called a bolster, the yoga prop, and you can improvise with a cushion on the couch or rolled up sleeping bag or something, and just an ordinary blanket. Right? These are nice. These wool blankets are nice because they're pretty firm, so you can create something that feels good for you. The first pose, if I were to choose one pose, resting pose, I think it would be this one. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my blanket down on the floor. Okay. I'm going to have this handy like this. And then I'm going to find myself first lying on the ground, over on my side, and then do one of these guys. And show you my fantastic socks. Now, from here, I'm going to grab my bolster. I bet this has never been done in this room before. Blazing trails. I'm going to lift my hips up and slide this underneath and then hang out here. Okay. So I've created this position where blood flow and energy can travel down all the way here. I'm going to put a lot of energy up here, and I can relax. And this is going to be extremely rejuvenating as I hang out here. So I could be here for anywhere between 5 and 20 minutes. Right? Your feet might fall asleep, in which case you can improvise and maybe bring them down like this, right? Several other things. But the idea is we want to set up shop here so I can be relaxed. Now you might notice my head is on the floor, my shoulders are on this blanket, but my hips are on this bolster, making this gentle slope down, and I can feel I could be here for several moments. So I'm going to demonstrate for the next 15 minutes. Just so you know, you all get it, right? So I'm hanging out here. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to roll over to my side. Right. And easy peasy, come back up. Okay? Awesome thing to do. Right? You've had a long day, you're feeling tired, come home, put your legs at the wall, turn on the lights, light a candle, put on some Barry Manilow, make a night of it, right? Okay. Yes. Any questions? Yes.
I just want to say, I find this, because I have orthostatic hypertension where I don't get enough blood in my head, I find laying in this pose for a while really helps get blood up in my head.
Yes, I think you're right on. And for Celeste, that really helped her really a lot too. She felt like she couldn't. She was feeling foggy up in her head. She felt like she couldn't get enough oxygen. So I'm glad you find that too. And what was the condition? What did you call it?
Orthostatic hypotension.
Orthostatic hypertension.
Or orthostatic intolerance.
Or
Either one.
orthostatic intolerance. So by getting upside down a little bit, it gets just easy blood flow up to your head. Really nice. Awesome. So wonderful. Perfect. Now, the next one I want to show you is one where we get a chance to, especially if we're splinting against pain, we sometimes get a chance, we kind of overly hunch our shoulders. It's going to overly stretch the muscles in our back and overly contract the muscles in our pectorals. And it puts a lot of pressure on our heart, right? And decreases our ability to just breathe. It's this kind of downward cycle of like closing in. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create something for my head. I'm going to put something here for my middle back. And as I lay down, I'm going to just simply lie back with my arms wide and hang out here for a long time. Now, for some of us, our lower back isn't going to love this. And so I'm going to bend my knees, and that takes the tension out of my lower back. And if my back still doesn't love this, then I'm going to roll over to my side. Instead of doing a sit-up, right, I'm going to change my cushion to be long ways. And then I could either hang out like this or chill out like this. And again, I get this nice passive stretch through these muscles of my pectorals, my arms relaxed. I'm literally grounded to the floor, my body's on the ground. And I'm just going to sit here, close my eyes, and practice that slow, deep breath. Okay? I'm going to try to focus my breath down into my belly. And as we'll talk about here in a moment with our breathing practices, this belly breath is going to activate what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, the opposite of fight or flight. Okay? What my teacher calls the rest and digest instead of fight and flight. Okay? Now our last pose, the best pose, the easiest pose, is simply about lying down consciously on the floor, something solid, closing your eyes, not to sleep necessarily, but just to rest. A conscious resting pose in yoga we call the Shavasana. Okay? And it's a great practice for anybody. And this is the way we end all of our yoga practices, even our intense yoga practices, right? But it's a great practice in and of itself, just to lie down in Shavasana. Can I answer any questions about any of these yoga poses? Awesome. So, again, you don't necessarily need any fancy equipment. You can improvise it with stuff you've got at home. You can buy those stuff pretty readily. You can look up yoga bolster or yoga blankets online. You get them shipped to you and stuff like that. For just the last few moments, I would like to go over a couple of breathing techniques on the back that you can do while in some of these poses or while sitting or lying down. My first inclination for somebody working through fatigue or fibromyalgia, again, is first to stabilize and calm, and then to build once you feel like you have the energetic capital to do so. So there are two styles of breathing techniques. Langana means a releasing, relaxing, ease. Brahmana means building. So I've given you two Langana calming breathing techniques and two Brahmana building techniques. Okay, and so you are in charge, and you can figure out if one is too much or how much and what. But let me kind of put you in the basic ballpark of these. The first one is belly breath. Emphasize exhales. So there's a ratio to how much we inhale versus how much we exhale. And the yoga technique of calming is to emphasize your exhale more than your inhale. So while sitting with a straight spine or lying down on the floor, close your eyes and put your hands on your belly. So maybe if you want to practice this, you're welcome to do so, and I'll just read this and talk you through. Hands on your belly, and then simply feel your breath move in and out for a few cycles. Next, begin to count the duration of your inhales and your exhales. So maybe I'm thinking of inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I might be making my breath a little bit longer. Right? And then eventually, what I want to do is I want to inhale for about 6 counts and exhale a little bit longer, about 8 counts. So I'm consciously elongating my exhale breath. Going to be inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And keep going like this. Inhale for 6, exhale for 8. It's important to remember not to strain. Even if that means, well, I'm not at 6 yet. Don't worry about it. If you need to go 4 on the inhale and 6 on the exhale, that's fine. Don't strain. But again, we're emphasizing our exhales. And then after you found a comfortable rhythm that doesn't strain your body or your nervous system, begin to extend your exhale count by 2 or 3. So maybe you inhale 6 and exhale 10 or 11. Right? The inhale pattern stays the same, so you end up focusing mostly on exhale. Continue for several rounds, a few moments, or until you feel like stopping. During or after the exercise, remember to notice how you feel and honor your body and your energy. So that's belly breath, emphasizing exhale, super easy. The next one is belly breath with no particular emphasis. This is perhaps the most gentle, just lying or sitting with your hand on your belly. As you breathe, just breathe into your belly, let your belly fill up with breath. And as you exhale, breathe back out. We breathe into our belly when we're relaxed. We breathe into our upper chest and our collarbones when we're stressed. So even if I'm feeling a little stressed, if I start to practice breathing in my belly, it's going to automatically sort of hit that override button and start that parasympathetic nervous response. Okay? So for Brahmana or building, the first one is alternate nostril breathing. And normally, this form of breath style we do to balance. It's sort of the perfect balance between building and releasing. However, if we're coming from a place of deficit, this is going to be gently building. Okay? Now, it's kind of funky, right? But just kind of go with it. We're going to take our right hand, and we're going to close our right nostril using our right thumb. And then as you exhale, you're going to breathe out through your left nostril. You sort of access the main sort of energy channel of the body. Then you're going to inhale in through your left nostril. With your fourth and fifth finger of your right hand, you're going to close off your left nostril and breathe out through your right nostril. And breathe back in through the right nostril. That's one round. So you close off your right nostril and breathe out through lefty. And back in through lefty. Close off lefty and breathe out through righty. Back in through righty. And that's the whole thing. And we just keep going like that for several rounds, back and forth. And the idea here, according to yoga technology and philosophy, these access two main energy channels in our body, the male side, the female side, the energetic side, the calming side, and we're simply balancing them out, which is going to have an effect of feeling a little lift in the day. So I would suggest, a couple moments with that, and then pause and relax, and notice how you feel. Okay. Alternate nostril breath. Any questions about that before we move on to our next one? Yes?
I use that one.
Oh, nice.
Can't do that.
So when she's stuck in traffic, starting to get stressed, she does the alternate nostril breathing. What happens?
It just calms me down.
Nice.
Nice.
Perfect. I love it. What a great resource. And then the last one is called Anuloma Viloma, which is a 3-part breath. What we're going to do is, again, gently building. We're going to breathe for 3 counts into our belly. We're going to pause for 3 counts. Breathe 3 counts into our middle chest. Pause for 3 counts. And then breathe 3 counts into our upper chest. Then we'll breathe out all the way 9 counts all the way out. It's just a few times together. And remember, if this is any sort of strain on you, please back off. Again, this is going to be probably the most building. And if we're not in a place of feeling like we want to build, then again, you can just watch. Okay, so everybody breathe out. We're on the same page. Breathe in through your nostrils and breathe just into your belly. Inhale, 2, 3. Now hold your breath. 2, 3. Breathe into your middle chest. 2, 3. Hold. 2, 3. Upper chest. 2, 3. Now long exhale. 9 counts all the way out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Belly. 2, 3. Pause. 2, 3. Middle chest. 2, 3. Pause. 2, 3. Upper chest. 2, 3. And breathe all the way out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you just think about this, or you can even put your hands on the different parts that's breathing, right? One more time. Inhale to your belly. 2, 3. Hold your breath. 2, 3. Middle chest. 2, 3. Hold. 2, 3. Upper chest. 2, 3. And release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Even just a couple of rounds, you might start to feel a little more energy in your body. But we need to always be checking in, because sometimes it's feeling great, but I don't realize that I'm maybe spending more energy than we need to, right? So it's something to always be careful of. And then whenever we get done with the practice, it's always nice, again, to give us that rest moment where we sit and just relax, settle in, and go back to that moment. So let's do this as we finish our lecture tonight, as we finish our practice tonight. I invite you to just, again, sit back in your chair, hands in your knees, close your eyes, and just do a check-in and feel how you're doing in this moment. First of all, check in with your body. And just as an observer, notice anything that's happening without judgment. Check in with your heart. What kind of emotions do you have right now? Just as information, you're like a scientist gathering data. Not to judge it, but just to notice. Even notice your thoughts. Notice what's going on in your head. When you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So before I finish tonight, I'm happy to answer any questions, or does anybody have any comments about any of this practice or anything you've learned tonight? Any questions about anything we could do? Yes?
I have a comment. So I was diagnosed when I was really little, and so through middle school and high school, I was doing biofeedback and pain management and the techniques to deal with it. And one thing that really helps me is I would do self-hypnosis, and the way that you would start out is you would pick one phrase that you would always say to yourself when you were checking in with yourself. So mine was, I feel quite quiet. And so whenever I do that, because I practice it every day when I'm falling asleep, I practice checking in with myself. I say, I feel quite quiet. And I start at my head and I move all the way down through my muscle groups and all the way down through my feet. And then throughout the day, when my 3 kids are driving me crazy and it's a really frustrating time, I'll just take a second and run in the laundry room or hide in the bathroom, and I'll just breathe and say, I feel quite quiet. And because you practice it, your brain automatically relaxes the muscle groups that you have trained to do that when you say that phrase.
Wonderful.
So if you can come up with a phrase that you're comfortable with, I chose one without S's in it because S's drive me crazy. And so that's why I chose that one. But I use it half a dozen times a day.
Wonderful. What a great idea. Thanks for the suggestion. That's fantastic. And speaking to that, I also want to say that I'm going to be starting a guided meditation course. It's called Yoga Nidra. It's very relaxing, where we'll literally be lying down on the floor and I'll be talking you through a guided meditation. This will be a 4-week series starting on April 2nd at my yoga studio in Trolley Square. And we'll do some very, very gentle yoga for just a few moments, lie down, and then I'll be talking you through a form of meditation that is very relaxing. And it'll go from 6:30 until 7:45 at night, so not too late. It'll happen for 4 weeks on Wednesday nights, starting April 2nd. So that's happening. So if for those of us who are interested in a mindful practice, we can do something like that too. I want to tell you about some offerings I'm doing with yoga, but any other comments or any other questions before? Yes?
Oh, I want to go ahead. We're both moms, so we have a lot of kid-related issues with our illness, but my son, he's 5, and I have a 1-year-old daughter, and my 5-year-old is just barely getting to the point where he's noticing that something's not right with mom, you know? And so a lot of times we'll be doing something, and then I'll be laying on the ground while they're playing and climbing all over me. And the other day my son he had a ball and he's laying down and he's like bouncing it off my head going, headache, leave my mommy alone. and it made me laugh even though it hurt. But I was just thinking that maybe it would be good to learn some of these techniques to do with
Absolutely.
my kids, because I'm just realizing how much is starting to affect him. Where before he's kind of clueless, he's oblivious. My 1-year-old doesn't care if you lay on the ground because that's just something to climb on and
Right.
to climb on you.
anyway, I was just had that comment and a question if you do anything with children in classes, or are they welcome?
Gosh,
in any
kids
other-
love yoga, right? And we do have some kids yoga class in the studio too, but some things you can do with, they love to be active, they love to be creative in their movement too, and going through some of these things, they also love to have some quiet time with mom, even pets get involved, like, oh, it's quiet time, come on, we'll sit down. Maybe it depends on the pet, right? But, not my pet. So, I found that when I teach my elementary school kids, we get active, we'll play fun yoga games, and then it's time to quiet down, and people understand, like, this is the time. And, we can use the release response, the relaxation response by, okay, it's time for Shavasana, we're coming to our resting part, and we'll lay down, and then we'll have them close their eyes, and then I'll say, okay, now squeeze every muscle in your body, and they get really, they really get engaged to squeeze all the muscle, and now let go of the side. We did it 3 times, and then last time they're like, And then the other thing is I give them something simple to focus on, like I'll put on some music. I also play the clarinet, so at the end of yoga practice, I'll pull the clarinet out, I'll play some low, slow tones, and kids especially are like, but their eyes are closed, so they're super focused, and then like little kitty snores. So anyway, just some ideas.
Sounds great. This just gave me an idea that maybe I could lay down with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Make it part of like the culture of the family. Like now we're having yoga time, and this is what yoga time is. So that's great. Thanks for sharing. Wonderful. What did you have a question?
Oh, just about the difference between straight historical class and hybrid.
Okay. Yeah. Laura brought up a good point. Restore. You didn't hear this?
No.
There's a difference between restore yoga class as kind of the style of class and maybe a hybrid restore class. And in a hybrid class, you're going to have a lot more movement in the class. And in the classical restore yoga class, you're going to have mostly all resting poses. Right? You might have a little bit of gentle mobilization, a couple of deep stretches, but you're going to typically have mostly resting poses. It's important to know the difference when you're maybe talk to the instructor or talk to the studio before you go in there, because it might be advertised as a restore yoga class, but they might be doing poses that might not be appropriate for somebody who's going through something like chronic fatigue. So it's nice to do a little bit of work. At my studio, we have 4 restore yoga classes a week. There's a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:20 a.m. So even not too early, not too late. And that'll last for an hour and 20 minutes. I teach the ones on Monday and Friday, and then we also have one in the evening time, 7:15 till 8:45. It'll be a little bit late for some people, but it works great if that evening time works for you. So 2 of them are taught by my business partner, who's an excellent yoga teacher as well, and then I teach them Monday and Friday mornings. Yes.
I don't know if this occurs to anyone else here. When I'm trying to relax, sometimes I notice I've got a fist.
Absolutely.
And I will look, and then I just go, oh, get rid of that. And I pull my hands out, stretch them, and then just relax them. And it's amazing how much that helps. Because just, I think I'm relaxing,
Right.
and I realize I've got a fist. And when I let it out, it helps a lot. I don't know if that happens to anybody else.
You're certainly not alone. I see it when people are in yoga class and we're in a relaxing pose and people are like, I'm relaxed, And I think, like I was saying, we get in these feedback loops, we get in these habits of holding tension, right?
Well, even if it's not tight, even
Yeah,
if
even
it's
if
just
it's just like
that,
this, exactly.
it's just,
And so
This
part of
is-
this process is bringing some mindfulness, some awareness. And I commend you for saying like, oh, this is what's going on.
yeah, what's going on?
Consciously. And that's why when I like the suggestions of going through the different body parts as you consciously relax, just check in with your shoulders. Are my shoulders relaxed? I guess they're not.
Right.
I have the tendency to clench my jaw. Anybody else a jaw clencher? Yeah. I come from a long line of jaw clenchers. We came across the Nina with holding the crest that said TMJ on the front of it. Right? And I can tell you, like, if the world's problems could be solved by just clenching my teeth a little bit tighter, I would have done it single-handedly for the entire world, right? doesn't help, but I have to consciously remind myself, like, this needs to relax. So when I practice my breathing, I will consciously drop my jaw a little bit, keep my lips slightly touching, maybe do a little side to side. And that's a technique that I know that I'm not doing.
That's good.
You know, they'll make that a very conscious
like
effort.
that.
It's like this. I'm a jaw clencher, maybe you're a fister, right? We all have our things.
I just wanted to mention too that there's a class being taught right now by Yael, is her name, and it's I guess trauma focused, but it's for chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia as well. You know, the body has gone through any trauma. And I find I've done a lot of restorative classes, so that was the yoga that I felt I could do. But going to her class is great because it incorporates some gentle movement, and I went tonight. It's free for anyone associated with Offer. So it's gentle movement. We spent maybe 17 minutes sitting down in a chair or on the floor, about 8 minutes standing up, and then the rest of the hour was lying down. So it was great. And she also incorporates some progressive muscle relaxation. So that's really great.
Good. And I know, yeah, she's a wonderful teacher. Great. Thank you, everybody. Anything else anybody wants to add? Well, at the end of a yoga practice, typically we'll share this word, which is namaste. And really what that means is a Sanskrit word saying the best, deepest part of me honors and acknowledges the best and deepest part of you. It's this reciprocity. We both share something that's great, and we acknowledge that. So I want to say thank you very much for being here and listening to me talk about yoga. And best of luck on your journey. Namaste. I've also brought, if anybody's